Do you think you have to be empathic or open to be a good writer?
I mean, isn't that the job of being a writer? Is to tell, the story of humans. I mean, you can certainly write a blockbuster movie. I mean, I know that there are a lot of big studio platforms out there that just, tell, and I'm not going to name any particular films, but there are some that just don't have character. They're all action and maybe storylines. But yeah, I think in order to tell stories that people gravitate to, you have to be willing to tell, a little bit of yourself in each one. One thing that people always ask you when you are writing is, why are you the person to tell this story? Why should you be the voice of this? And it's easier to, I don't want to say prove, but it's easier to persuade people that you are the right person to tell a particular story if you yourself can relate to it. I think that's what we're all looking for. Anytime that we go to a movie, we're looking to experience a kind of catharsis. We're looking to experience some kind of human emotion. I find that my best pieces, my best work, are the ones that I've really put myself into, and they have a bit of me in. Like the Baltimore School of Charm. There's a reason that story is so impactful, and there's a reason that it resonates with people. It's because it's inspired by my family. It's something that I've lived through. It's something that other women have lived through. It's a bit of me on that page. Absolutely, you need to be empathetic.
Sure, and at the same time, being empathetic and open also has its drawbacks in that maybe things wound you more, or it's more intense for you. So how are you able to be open and sensitive to things that are coming at you for story ideas, but then also be able to receive notes? And sometimes they're not always going to be positive, or go into a room and maybe you read that room and it's not friendly.
Because I think that that's learning the writing process. You can learn, it's like, let's imagine we were building a building. You've got to have some kind of a floor plan to do it, right? You've got to know the rules before you can break them. So if you can learn structural engineering and how to put it together, then you can shape it into whatever shape you want it to be. You can make a skyscraper with, turrets on it if you wanted to, but that's how you find your voice. That's how you start making stories your own. Learn the rules before you break them. So, you can't tell such an emotionally overdrawn story, for where you've got your lead crying or being assaulted or abused for, 2.5 hours. Nobody's going to want to see that. I think that you as a writer need to understand that you have a duty to your audience to make sure you tell a story that moves forward and that you tell a story that progresses. Don't skimp on character. Certainly save those moments, of great emotion, but learn how to construct your story first. You're serving a lot of masters when you're writing, and if you don't have good structure, I mean, unfortunately, your story will fall apart.
How does someone become good as a writer? You said at first you weren't sure you could do it, but you wanted to definitely learn, have that as a safeguard. You didn't want to just try it and say you were a writer without doing it.
I still have problems saying I'm a writer. I don't know, when do you ever become good? I mean, if you're Maya Angelou or somebody like that, then you're definitely a good writer. But I don't know. I think asking yourself the question, always wanting to be better, always knowing that you can dig deeper, and always finding that you can do something better, that will help you lead to improving your process. And I want to stay away from using labels like good or great, because that kind of puts a lot of pressure on yourself, especially for somebody that's just starting out. You have to be okay with failing. You only need one story to spark the next thing in your career. I failed for 3 years with Baltimore. And then when I finally got it right, it struck the right chord.
What do you think the difference was? Just working on it? Just honing it?
I think it was my dogged perseverance of not giving up on it. I wanted people to see what I saw. And I had to find a way to communicate that out. And I think just writing draft after draft after draft after draft, and I've probably gone through 30 iterations of that script. You know, with time, I've certainly gotten better. I've improved my own process so I can shorten that writing cycle. But the first one, I had no idea what I was doing.
What were some of the notes that you got, and how much of the feedback did you incorporate to change?
I mean, I incorporated feedback from a variety of sources. I incorporated it from some of the competitions that I was in, some of the instructors at UCLA. Character was one of the things that people would really hone in on. I mean, obviously there are things like, well, this is a bit of a plot hole. You may want to look at this, but those are the obvious things. But people would always talk about making the character more in depth. Like what little things can you do to make a character stick out in someone's mind? There's a second female lead in Baltimore. It's a young girl named Shasta. She's 17, and so there's a relationship between Millie, the lead, and Shasta. So Millie is trying to outrun the law, and she gets stuck in a small town where, you know, she can't get out of it, and she ends up helping Shasta, the young girl there. But Shasta has a stutter. So that was one thing that I was able to develop with Shasta. Initially, she didn't have a stutter. But I gave her that impediment to help show her relationship with the world around her. So I think that there are certain traits, there are certain mannerisms, there are certain things that you can do to, just build up your character and obviously give them a backstory, but that will inform the decisions on how they interact with the world.
Did you miss the two characters when you were finished writing? Was it hard for you to give them up?
I tell you what's going to be hard for me is when it gets made. You know, as a writer, you typically don't have any control over something when it leaves your hands. So I hope that the company that ends up buying Baltimore School of Charm, I hope that they do those characters justice, because it's not a movie of the week. You know, it's certainly not a melodrama. It's a very strong, powerful piece, and it's my hope that a female director will end up helming it. I think that that's important to actually authentically tell the story. They're like, your characters are like your children. When you send them out into the world, you hope that they're received well and that they do well.
So the feedback initially was that the character, at least the main one, wasn't as fleshed out, and so you really worked on making her just more three-dimensional?
More three-dimensional, yeah.
And so when you finally, you won, it was the UCLA screenwriting competition? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Their extension,
okay. And so these different agencies just found your email, obviously?
No, what happened is when there are different categories within the competition. So it's best feature, it's best spec pilot, and then best pilot. So, and then you're ranked 1, 2, and 3. So there's a total of 9 awards that they've given out. And then there's, obviously first place, second place, third place. So when they send the announcement out, and they've got a list of, thousands of executives and agents that, they've spent years cultivating relationships with. When the announcement goes out, they put out an ad in Variety announcing it. And then they also do a mass email to all of these executives. Oh. So that's how they got tipped off. And, you put first place feature on a competition like that, and it's going to spark some interest. And fortunately it did. And fortunately it got me, the reps that I have today.
So then part of having a rep is they're submitting you to work on shows. How does this work?
So typically what happens, and there's an issue right now with the WGA and the ATA, so I'm not gonna go into that in this particular interview, because there are many people that are much more positioned, or much better positioned to speak on that than I am. But typically what happens is, if you've got a spec pilot or a spec feature, they will take that material and they will send it out to different development execs and studios and, see if it's a match. And they could, you can write on assignment. So let's just say if you meet with a development exec and they like your writing, I'm like, well, I've got this project. Would you be interested in taking a crack at it? So that's the job of an agent, is to find their client's work.
And so how much advance notice do you get when you have a meeting?
I have one this week that has been on my calendar for 6 weeks.
Oh, that's good. So you have your outfit, everything's ready. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, otherwise, I had one a couple weeks ago. I had a general a couple weeks ago, and she said she actually had an intern, and she asked if it was okay if the intern sat in on the meeting. And I was like, it's totally fine. I mean, it wasn't going to throw me off my game. But we talked about it later. She was like, I think you set the bar a little too high for generalists, because she said, we've had some interesting people come in here. She said, yeah, one of the worst pieces of advice that I've ever heard writers being given is to dress like your genre. And I was like, what does that mean? She was like, I don't know. But I was like, what are you supposed to do? I guess if you write action adventure, you're supposed to dress, I don't know, but don't do that. That's bad advice.
So just wear something like, you know, business casual, or...
I mean, don't dress like a schlub, you know,
Right.
make sure that you look professional and neat, clothes that you're comfortable in. I mean,
Sure.
you're not trying to over impress, you know, you're just be yourself. Just look neat and professional, just be yourself.
Then how long did it take for you to develop sort of like the pitch that is you? Because they want to ask you this, and sometimes people are comfortable, and then sometimes... So tell me about yourself. How long did that take?
It changes every time I go into a room. You have to learn how to read your audience, because you may be dealing with somebody who is more closed off, and maybe they don't want to know so much personal information about yourself. I think instead of developing your pitch, you really need to know your story, because you can't tell your pitch the same way every single time, because then it sounds canned. It sounds like you're reading it off of an index card, and nobody wants to be, you know, read a PowerPoint slide. You need to be in a position to authentically tell your story at any given, you know, notice.